Hi Andy, Namaste. Welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera Season 3. It's an incredible privilege to have you on the show.
Well, namaste. Nice to meet you, man. It's great to be here. I've been watching some of your videos and some of the amazing guests you've had on. Great job collecting all these amazing stories and talking to so many great musicians that I admire. So I look forward to watching more of your videos. And thanks for having me be a part of that. I appreciate it, man.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on the show. I've been meaning to talk to you for the longest time.
All
And
right.
today happened to be a very special day. We're also going to have a special guest who embodies some of the highest aspirations of being a true guitar player and a
Awesome.
composer from India. And he's going to be joining in for a special segment.
Excellent.
So where are you right now? I see you're in your
This is
your
my studio.
your
So
studio
yeah,
setup. Yeah.
it's where I record a lot of my guitar tracks.
Hmm.
I've done a lot of live streaming from this room. It's the
Okay.
upstairs of my home, basically.
Okay.
During the pandemic, when we couldn't travel, I started doing live stream concerts every Saturday from
Lovely.
my studio, and I did about 190 of them.
My goodness.
I've got pretty prolific with it. So it was a great way for me to keep active and be connected with my fans. And I still do it occasionally. It's a platform called Stage It. And
Okay.
if you go to my andytimmons.com website and subscribe to my email mailing list, I send notices out when I do these. And it's a lot of fun because I play music
Hmm.
for throughout my career and I can communicate with the crowd.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is I wish I could be better about panning around, but there's a drum kit over here and more amps and way too many
Amazing.
pedals and it's a big mess. Yeah, I love it.
Amazing.
My
Amazing.
workshop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got to have a space. The environment speaks for itself, right? You've got to have
Yeah.
that environment to make all of this incredible music.
Well, thank you. And I feel very blessed. So this is when I'm recording and stuff, but in my office is where I
Hmm.
start my day every day. So it's where my desk and computer is, but it's where I go. It's my little practice amp and my coffee in the morning. And that's really my happy place too, when I can just get up and get my coffee going and just get the fingers going and just try to
Yes.
learn something every day to start my day. That's a good way to get things started. Yeah.
It's pretty intriguing, right? Like as any musician would have a dream of setting up their own studios.
Yeah.
What was your journey like? How did you come up with your choice of amplifiers, gear, lighting, and the ambience of this entire place? How did you go about that?
I mean, yeah, I'm to say that I ever dreamed, because I came from a very humble beginnings,
Yeah.
there's so much of my career that I could have never have dreamed of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of the tours that I got to do, some of the bands that I got to open for,
Yeah.
meeting the people that I've met with, the people I've played with, and to be in a home where I can have my own
Yeah.
recording studio never would have dawned on me that this was even possible.
Mm.
Everything has just kind of happened with me just having kind of faith and just the process of always trying to improve as a player, um and just keeping going. You know what I mean? It's like I never had a plan. the
Okay.
the path that led me to Danger, my first kind of bigger gig in 1989. I was just always learning. I went to different music schools. I had a teacher once. I was self-taught from the age of 5 till the age of 16. And
Okay.
again, there was no grand plan. I knew that guitar was going to be my life. I knew music was going to be my life. And I knew that being versatile was going to be an important part of that. So that's when I started, seeking out a teacher and learning how to read and really, trying to just absorb as many styles as I could. And it really wasn't work because anything
Yeah.
with a guitar in it, I loved. I was just always so attracted to the instrument, whether it was, nylon string, classical or bossa nova or jazz or heavy rock. It didn't matter to me. I wanted to know how to do it. And I
Mm.
still do. There's still amazing
Sure.
music that I just marvel at and still
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
man, I'd love to be able to do that. And somehow through that, I've had a career,
Yeah.
but by having that openness and that the versatility, it's allowed me to be in a band with Simon Phillips, but also, be in a band with Olivia Newton-John and love each of those things equally. And
Yeah.
and to do the Redcoats. I mean, that's a very vast amount of musical turf that the band is able to cover. And that's
Right.
kind of the beauty of that band, is that Matt knows that he can write anything that he
Mm.
can imagine, and then we're going to figure out how to play. And that's basically what that band is. But yeah, but I know the question is kind of broad ranging, and I'm going in lots of different directions. But if you want to
Yeah.
speak specifically about gear and all that, we can do that too. But that's
Sure.
kind of I'm only wanting to say that because that's kind of been the path of my life. There's a lot of it that I didn't know would be possible, but
Yeah.
maybe I kind of dreamed of it. I mean, but it was never about fame and it was never about money, but it was about
Mm.
the respect of other musicians and hopefully
Yeah.
making people happy. That's by far the biggest rewards, is when somebody says, I love this song, or I love this performance. Or if, my a lot of my heroes are now my friends. And then
Yeah.
if they dig what I do, starting with my older brothers. I was the youngest of four boys.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all 4 years apart. So my eldest brother is 12 years older. Then I have a brother 8 years older and 4 years older. To get their approval kind of was a lot of, my early encouragement. And it wasn't easy. They you know, weren't lavishing praise upon me, but over time, it's like I felt like I could earn that, and that's a big part of what drives me too. Just wanting that acceptance from the people that I respect and love.
Beyond all the incredible projects that you're involved in, do you find time to sit with your family and just jam with your brothers? Do you get to do
Well,
that often?
not nearly as much as I'd love to. Now I have a son who's 20, and he
Okay.
started playing guitar 4 years
Okay.
ago. He was 16. And
Okay.
growing up in this household, of course, he's surrounded by music and guitars, but it never really seemed to draw his interest until one day I started hearing
Yeah.
Pantera and Slipknot
Mm.
come from his bedroom. I'm like, oh, that's new. And so he and his buddy were starting to listen to the heavier, 80s and 90s rock.
Yeah.
And he said, Dad, I think I want to learn how to play. It's like, okay, man, you're in the right house. I can help you. And so I helped him a bit, but he was like a lot of young players. He was learning so much just on YouTube and
Yeah.
watching lessons, getting things like that. And they started playing. So now they have a band. It's called Disdain. It's Distain. You can find them on Instagram and
Sure.
the streaming services. They've done their first EP that was engineered and produced by Sterling Winfield, who's from the Pantera
Oh,
camp. So
wow.
I knew those guys a little bit here in
Huge.
Texas, and Sterling, the engineer, is a longtime friend of mine.
Mm.
So I'm so proud of him for finding, as a parent, you're just hoping that your child can find something that they love and that they really have passion about.
Yeah.
I'm just, of course, it's a thrill to me for that to be guitar for him, because that's, of
Mm.
course, what still drives me to this day. So, but I
Yeah.
don't see my older brothers nearly enough. But when we do, it's a lot of music talk and not as much jamming, because they all played a little bit of guitar, but they didn't quite take it as seriously as I have over the years.
Got it. Got it.
So yeah, but family, of course, is very, very important. I get to spend a lot of time with my wife and my son.
Talking about, the passion for the guitar as an instrument,
Yeah,
we've had generations of some phenomenal guitar players coming out, and the tradition has been going on for like generations now, and it still has a very bright future.
I
But
think so.
many of them often debate on this very topic that there's this idea that the guitar's full potential has been completely exhausted, and nothing new can be achieved with it. So, what are your thoughts on something like this?
It depends on what they think is doing something new. And I mean, certainly there's been a lot that's been done.
Yeah.
If you take the origin of the nylon string classical guitar to the electric guitar and all the different eras from Django to Les Paul, to the 60s rock, to Jimi Hendrix, to Eddie Van Halen, and all the technical growth along the way.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine. And for so long there, it was like, well, speed was such a thing, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
speed and fluidity. And it's amazing, as like you say, each generation that comes along,
Yeah.
if the first guitar playing they hear is Alan Holdsworth or Yngwie Malmsteen, well, they think, well, that's how you do it. And they might have this different perception as somebody from my generation, where we hear it and go, oh, that must be difficult. So that continues, but at a certain place, of course, athleticism that it
Mm,
takes to do that really doesn't mean anything anymore. But to me, I think we're only scratching the surface, like barely scratching the surface of the expressive potential. Jeff Beck, Pat Metheny, Eric Johnson. There's some players that can really touch a much deeper place in the human spirit than I think very few have gotten to. That's what I aspire for. I'll never, be someone that will be competitive. I don't. I just want to. For me, the important thing is to write better songs and to connect with that soul of the person.
mm,
By honoring what's real in me. I realized that early on in my career that if I'm trying to do something because I think that's what I'm supposed to do or somebody else wants, it's never going to be as good as what I really feel, what I really love, because it starts off very selfishly,
mm.
by honoring what's in my own heart and what I want to express. If I do that to the best of my ability, then I think that has more potential to reach other people in a very honest and authentic way. I hope that makes sense.
It certainly does make a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
So yeah, no, but I understand the point. I understand the argument and the dialogue about, well, it's all been done. And I have
Correct.
people in some of
Correct.
my own bands that say, well, it's all been done, blah blah.
Yeah.
I really bristle. I bristle at that idea, meaning not for me, not
Mm,
for me. I mean, I think every human spirit has infinite possibilities,
mm.
and that includes on the instrument of their choice. Whether a new sound is going to be made or a new technique, to a certain degree, it's all a vehicle for expression. I'm not concerned about winning a race or, I don't know. I just want to be the best version of myself, and I know in that I can really push the envelope for what I think is possible.
Well, you certainly have.
Well,
You've had so
I'm
many
I'm I'm up,
faces.
I'm up to a good start. Yeah.
Certainly, you've had a lot of evolution, and you've
Mm.
transcended over the years as a guitar player. If I were to
Yeah.
ask you to point a finger and tell me, how has your guitar technique evolved in recent years? What are some of the specific elements that you would be able to point me towards?
I think I don't know that it's a specific technique. I think and I always say this to upcoming players, there's no shortcut for time on the instrument. And with that becomes a better ability to draw out of the instrument what you want to hear, what our ear is trying to get, from the instrument. And through the evolution, I think part of that is just the natural tendency to want to hear different things from yourself. I love going and I love playing songs from my early part of my career. I play Electric Gypsy and Cry for You every night with my band. Any gig we ever do, I'm always going to play those because I love to play them, or even Groove or Die, which is a very technical kind of piece. I love all that, but I also love, some of the more delicate dynamic things that it may be evolving in my playing. I can't specifically objectively point to what those are because it's happening naturally.
Okay.
Is the only thing I can say. But it's what's feeding that is my taste will change, and I listen to very different things from week to week from month to month. I had a recent trip. I'm calling it was a pilgrimage to London and Liverpool to visit a bunch of Beatles related sites. And I had a
Amazing.
a recording session at Abbey Road in Studio 2 where a lot of that,
Yeah, I
Beatles
think you
music
put
was
out a
created.
single.
I did. So there was a solo piece called Truth that
Correct.
is from a series of solo pieces that I've written, but I also recorded a kind of a lost Beatles song that John Lennon wrote that's going to be
Hmm.
released in a couple of weeks where I played all the instruments. Not only did I play some of that, I played some really good rock, 1964 style Beatles
Wow.
sounding stuff. So that's going to come out in a couple of weeks. I'm really proud of it. It's called I'm in Love. And it was one of the songs that, John and Paul were writing, that they had so many songs of their own. They were giving them to other artists, that Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, managed other groups. So they were giving songs to Peter and Gordon and Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. And this band called The Foremost recorded John's song called I'm in Love. And it's an okay version, but years later, the original piano demo that John did in 1963 leaked out on bootlegs, and then Apple officially released it. And the demo is so great. I thought the Beatles needed to record this song. I'm
Yeah.
sad that they didn't. So what I did in Abbey Road that day was record what I thought they might have sounded like if they did it. And so you guys will hear that in a couple of weeks. But in the past 2 weeks, I've listened to nothing but Oscar Peterson.
Oh, lovely.
So he's just, of course, one of the greatest pianists of all time, but it's his feel. It's the combination of swing on
Mm.
the deepest level with the greatest blues playing. So there's a lot of what I do, even when I'm playing rock and roll, that's very much influenced by Charlie Parker and all my favorite jazz guitar players, from Barney Kessel originally to Pass and, Wes
Sure.
Montgomery, George Benson, especially, and then guys, the next generation guys like, Mike Stern and Metheny,
Hmm.
that even if I'm playing rock, you might not instantly recognize it as, oh, well, I hear this Charlie Parker influence, but it's all there is because of I've listened to so much and absorbed so much of that it influences my phrasing, and there's a bit of swing in a lot of what I do, and just the kind of phrasing and turns of phrases that, somebody like that Parker would just do so brilliantly, and that's what I love about Oscar.
Yeah.
Even though I've been listening to him since I was about 16, I'm just trying to learn some of his phrases, putting it into my transcribe software on my
Hmm.
laptop, slowing it down. He tends to be pretty good tempo wise, but just some of the greasy bluesy things and just his drive, I like to absorb and try to give some of that into my playing.
Speaking of different styles, one
Yeah.
of the lesser known projects you've been involved in is the instrumental Bossa Hits album with
Oh,
Sydney Carvalho.
yeah.
So could you describe its intent and your interest in going that route?
Well, my first guitar teacher, like I said, I was self-taught from the age of 5, but I found a teacher when I was 16,
Yeah.
and he was teaching me how to read, but he also started loaning me records. He was a really good jazz player. He played very much in the style of Barney Kessel. So
Mm.
he would loan me these records of guys like Howard Roberts, and there was one record called The Great Guitars, and it was Barney Kessel, Herb Ellis, and a guy named Charlie Bird. And Charlie had a hit with a bossa tune called O Barquinho.
Mm.
And, so the bossa nova is actually a really good style of music as a portal for a rock musician to learn about jazz, because it's still straight eighth feel, but the harmony is very much jazz. So I would be learning standards with this teacher like Misty and All the Things You Are and All of Me, but he would also be giving me, lead sheets to Girl from Ipanema or
Oh.
Corcovado, things like that. So I
Mm.
was learning the feel and the sound of that. So years later, there's a company that I work with called G&I. They're based out of Sao Paulo, a Brazilian company.
Okay.
And I was in Brazil to do some guitar workshops. And I said to my friend Sydney, I said, "Hey, I'm in Brazil. I feel like could we find like in each city, could we find somebody that could play bossa nova with me? I'd like to be able to do that." And he says, "Oh, I play bossa. My daughter sings bossa. My wife sings bossa." So we started, we would do a bossa or two at every guitar seminar, and the Brazilian people really resonated with that. They loved that, this American rock and roll guitar player
Yeah.
knew and loved bossa nova. So some videos got posted on YouTube, and we got contacted by not only Marcos Valle, who wrote Summer Samba, but also from Roberto Menescal, who wrote that song called O Barquinho that I'd heard Charlie
Amazing.
Bird play when I was 16. He said, "I love what you guys are doing. Come to my studio. I won't charge you anything. I'll produce it. Just come to my studio." We're like,
That's brilliant.
we couldn't have, I mean, in a million years, 16-year-old Andy would have, to think that I would be in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro so those that don't know, Roberto Menescal, along with Carlos Lira, Gil Gilberto, Jobim, they created the style. They were all hanging out together in Rio de Janeiro, and this because of the what they were fans of. Uh, Miniscal was a big Barney Kessel fan, and they were learning about jazz. And Joe Gilberto came in from the hills and had this amazing guitar style, and so it was all happening together. So for him to give us the stamp of approval and want us to record in the studio was a dream.
Yeah.
And so another bossa influence for me is Pat Metheny is a big Brazilian loving
Sure.
uh, composer and player, and so his feel and sound and his approach to jazz tone. When Sydney and I started playing, I was kind of hearing myself more like in a Metheny type of style, and I like to
Mm.
play like that. But both Sydney and Miniscal were like, no, 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 no. That your strat, your neck pickup, your bluesy thing. Do that. So they encouraged me to be more me, and that's how that record happened. So I'm really proud of it. I always think I can do better, but there's a beautiful, if people are interested in the bossa, there's a beautiful CD and DVD set that's available. They can go to my website, and everything was shot. Everything, they're all live takes, just playing in the studio. And it's really well documented. So yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot of fun. But yeah, very different than what I normally do. But that's
certainly.
that's what I love, to have that challenge. And through Sydney, I learned so much because I only knew a handful of Joe Beam tunes, on for
Okay.
bossa nova. So he was teaching me all these songs I hadn't heard, and so I discovered a lot of beauty that was just waiting for me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Andy, what can you tell me about your soloing philosophy?
Hmm. when when things are right, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm letting the muse guide me. But the soloing for me is any music. I'm just trying to play what I really feel is right at that time. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I try to let go of ego as much as I can. I want to serve the music and have it, you know, be the best iteration of whatever it is, whatever the style is, whatever is happening. I'm trying to fit in and make that. Sometimes, I guess if you are the soloist, you are the important thing at the moment, but it's very much in reaction to and along with everything that's happening with me. That's what was interesting about some of the Red Coach recordings, because we were never in the same room
Yeah.
for those recordings. I mean, Matt and Greg would record the bass and drums with a keyboard player in LA. They would send me the tracks. And so there's on the very first Red Coats record, there's a song called Michael Collins.
Yeah.
And there's a very lengthy extended solo, which I wasn't thinking I would be comfortable with. So yeah, just play till you stop playing. Okay, great. It goes on for like 7 minutes or something. And what you hear is one take. And
Hmm.
what was amazing about that is that Matt and Greg have played with, some of the greatest guitar players, keyboard players, horn players. They've played in every style, every imaginable configuration. And so they just played what they imagined the soloist might want to hear. And as I played the take, there was so many times where there was real dialogue happening, and it wasn't in the same room together. I could play a figure, and it's like Greg, is plays the same rhythm, like he'd be reacting to what I did, and then vice versa. There was so much of that happening. They made it so easy for me to really play something that went somewhere. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
I don't just want to start, and it's why I don't have a. I Of course every guitar player has licks, but I'm listening for, and what I want to hear is something melodic and fresh in the moment. And it's one thing I got a lot from Chet Baker, the great
Hmm.
jazz trumpet player. I never heard him repeat. Like I can't think of one Chet Baker lick right now, but I can sing you, you know, a bunch of solos, and they always seemed real and in the moment. And as I learned more about him, he couldn't read music. He couldn't really tell you what the changes were. He just was completely by ear. So when things are right, I'm not really thinking about, the harmony. Of course, if I tap into the conscious mind, I will tell you what's happening harmonically, and I'm, can tell you what the proper notes may or may not be. But in real time, if I can let go as much of that with after enough experience, you're just kind of letting your instincts go. and
Yeah.
hopefully connecting in a meaningful way. But yeah, I like things to tell a story if it can, if there's enough time to develop something like that, or even if it's just an 8 bar pop solo. I don't want it to just be this demonstration of here's what I can do.
Mm.
Though within there will be things that yes, of course, this is what I know how to do. But I'm just trying to make a musical statement. And if there's a 5 minute solo, man, you better pace yourself and you better have some direction, and or else it's not going to keep anybody's interest.
Got it.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you currently define your musical objectives and principles as an artist? I'm sure it might have been different a couple of
Yeah.
years ago.
Well, I mean, if you look back to my first solo record, which was Ear Ecstasy, I had been in Danger Danger, which was kind of a Bon Jovi hair band at kind of at the
Yeah,
tail end of that MTV era.
yeah,
And it was a wonderful experience. And at that time, I thought being in a band on a major label was the holy grail. I thought this is the goal. And it kind of was at that time. But as I was in the middle of it, though I thoroughly enjoyed it, I also realized this has nothing to do with why I love music and why I play music. So when Ear Ecstasy, my first solo record came out, because I had been kind of pigeonholed, oh, that guy's in a hair band, that record for me was like, I want to show, I want to show everything I can do. There's a country tune, there's a Matheny influence song, there's everything was very much Satriani
yeah.
influence because I was a big, fan of his playing, and he was a big reason why I started playing instrumental guitar when I heard Surfing with the Alien. I just thought this is glorious. These are great songs with incredible playing. Everything that I needed for music was right there. So that record was kind of like, me, hey, look at me, look what I can do. It was kind of like my all styles demo. And in a way it was the right thing to do. It was just me kind of expressing all the styles that I love to play. But then as your career goes on, you start to realize, okay, um, I got to let go of thinking that I need to play as good as or like somebody else.
Okay.
And that I don't really start feeling that way until my 50s. And it's still difficult to this day. It's hard not to listen to players that humble you to a degree and not feel like, oh man, I'm no good because I can't do that, you know.
Mm.
So there's a bit of that we need in our work ethic, that of course we need the people to set those bars that we'll never reach, but that push us to just try harder and to try to improve what we can do. But to let it be a negative thing is dangerous. And
Sure, sure.
especially with social media, and we're being hit with these 30-second clips of amazing, virtuosity. It's easy to feel less than. So
Mm.
that's a dangerous point. But all we really need to do at the end of the day is really honor whatever gift that we have, whatever. And sometimes the gift is just the passion. Sometimes the gift is, I love this so much that I want to do it. Some people may have a little more advantage with some physicality or whatever it might be, but I don't think there's any true brilliant musician or virtuoso that was born that way. They had to love it, and they had to work harder than everybody else, by spending that time. So throughout my career, it's recognizing, okay, let go of the need of being as good as or feeling less than anybody else, and just honoring what gift I have, and working at it every day, as much time as I can afford. Um, and that's what drives me. I will listen to George Benson, I'll listen to Oscar Peterson and go, man, I wish I could do that. But
Mm.
there's already a George Benson, there was already an Oscar Peterson. I don't need to do that. But if we can look at all of our heroes. We can look at Stevie Ray Vaughan, we can look at Jimi Hendrix, we can look at Eric Johnson, and we can hear, and we know who their influences were. You can hear that, but through that, it comes out being them. Same with the Beatles. They idolized so much American music from African American R&B to, girl groups. They loved it all, and it came out them, but they were sometimes very directly ripping off, and taking
Yeah.
bits.
Yeah.
David Bowie put it the best way when somebody was trying to compliment him as being this iconic pioneer. He says, "No, no, 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 no." He says, "I'm just a collector."
Mm.
And that really resonated with me because that's all really, Now, of course, there are some brilliant players like Eddie Van Halen and Holdsworth that they had their heroes too, but some that just break through in a particularly, genius way. But a lot of us, we're just a combination of all the things that we've collected, all the things that we love,
Yeah.
And for me, it's clearly very wide ranging. If I go from Ace Frehley to, Joe Gilberto, you're gonna get something different. And that's a real beautiful thing. Not everybody maybe is trying to find their own voice. They may just want to just play only Stevie Ray Vaughan music. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you love it and that's what you enjoy doing. But for those of us that genuinely have a broad spectrum of things that we love, it really
Hmm.
helps by not being able to do each thing, maybe at the level, but it comes out as you. You forge your own identity sometimes by accident, just because of what you love,
You did speak about the whole idea of identity.
Hmm.
I've often wondered how difficult or how challenging was it for someone like you to integrate your guitar style within a context like G3?
Well, so again, it's now the times that G3 has invited me to play, it's always been here in Texas. And it's that those were some of my favorite, moments on stage, just because I was surrounded by heroes, but guys
Yeah.
that had become friends of mine over time. But again, it speaking directly about the very first G3, as you remember, was Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, and Eric Johnson.
Correct.
I'm invited to join them in Dallas at the first time they did the tour. And so the position that I'm in, I'm watching three of the greatest guitar players in the world.
Hmm.
And I'm going to go play at the very end of all this. How do
Right.
you think it makes a guy like me is like, what am I going to do? But therein is the real lesson. You're
Mm.
not going to out Joe or out Steve or out Eric, these guys. You just have to be you. And as nervous as I might have been, each time it went really, really great just by letting all that any insecurities go or feeling the need to try to do anything that wasn't natural. That's but luckily by that time in my career I'd had plenty of onstage experience. It wasn't like I was going on stage for the first time. So I took a good bit of hit my own history with me. But I just happened to be sharing the stage with these iconic guys who are and were my heroes, but and are still are, but they're friends. They're um, like we were talking about earlier, having the respect of my older brothers. There's
Yeah.
three older brothers right there, and they're not that much older, but they came before me, and they shaped whoever I am right now. Each of those guys are a big part of it, just because of what they were achieving in the time that I was coming up and learning. It had a massive effect on my life.
Mm. The first time I heard the brilliant record, the spoken and the unspoken,
Oh,
I must tell you that I startled for a minute. I didn't know who you were at that point of time
oh, okay,
when I heard some of the songs,
yeah.
but the kind of tone, the kind of identity,
Uh,
and the kind of benchmark you had set in terms of that particular record
yeah.
is truly marvelous.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah.
I'm honored by that. Not many people bring that record up as much as some of the others, but that was a special time for me because I'd had my first.
What's the meaning? Could you start with the meaning behind the title?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It has to do with prayer, and I was at a funeral.
Okay.
It was my wife's grandmother had passed, and
Hmm.
the clergyman, the religious figure that was presiding over the funeral, mentioned something about prayers, that the spoken prayer was just as important as the unspoken prayer.
Mm.
And that really spoke very deeply to me. I don't have a specific religious affiliation, but I have a deep connection with whatever the universal spirit is. I
Okay.
feel it very deeply. And so within that, there's a lot of unspoken prayer and dialogue and thoughts that I have in that direction.
Hmm.
So that's one very specific meaning. But then of course, um, instrumental music versus vocal music, and that was another record where I kind of had a bit of both. And the thing that I always talk about with instrumental music is that I think that it has the potential to go a bit deeper emotionally,
Yeah.
um, because you're not confined to the written and spoken language.
Hmm.
Whereas I of course I love popular music with lyrics, and I there's songs on there that I'm very proud of that are vocal. But a song like the spoken and the unspoken, or All Is Forgiven, or what else is on there? Is the Princess on there? I think it might
Yep.
be.
Yep.
There's some of these songs where the beauty is it might mean something very specific to me, but it can mean anything that the listener needs. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
And that can be a real beautiful thing too. But that very specifically, it was the spoken and the unspoken was that commentary that I heard at the funeral
Funeral.
that made me think of that. And yeah, and so there's on the cover there's a couple of visual references to that. It's my hand, but
Hmm.
those are my wife's lips on the
Hmm.
cover.
Hmm.
And then scribbled in the very outskirts of the artwork, it's kind of a melange of imagery. But before my wife's grandmother passed away, she was in the hospital and she couldn't speak, but she wrote, "Where's Andy?" You know?
Wow.
Yeah. And so
Touching.
that's her actual writing on there. But it's hard to make out. But if you know what it is, now you know what it is.
Yeah.
You can just make that out. But it was a very sweet thing that I wasn't with her when she passed. And actually, my wife and I, when we met, her grandmother was very elderly, and within the year, her health was deteriorating. So we got married when we did to make sure we got married while Rosie was still alive. So, in which we were successful. So we were married with Rosie there, but
Amazing.
she was gone within the year, sadly. But yeah, some fun, very fond memories. Thanks for bringing that up. Nobody's ever asked me about that.
How
You're the
does
first.
how does spirituality inform your music?
I think it informs everything we do if we're open to that.
Hmm.
Spirituality to me, well, a lot of these things are hard to verbalize, the spoken and the unspoken. But I think it's the way we lead our lives, the way we function in society, the
Yeah.
way we are as a human being. It took me years to realize that the way I function musically in a band, the way I write is the exact same way I live my life in the world. I'm extremely aware of the consequences or the effects of what my actions, you know, will have on others. Basically, if I'm walking down the street and somebody's walking straight towards me, I'm going to be the first one to move. I will happily change my path to avoid anything unpleasant, and I'll
Yeah.
function in music the same way. I don't want to play something that will interfere or disrupt the overall beauty. I want to be that in society and nature
Hmm.
and music. And to me, I guess that's kind of a spiritual thing. But it's extremely personal, and there's so much of you know the spiritual world that we don't understand. But all I can do is you know honor what I feel and move towards trying to lead a better life.
It's beautiful.
I think that would be at the center of just about any religion or spirituality that's being taught. So for whatever reason, I was brought up in the Catholic Church, and there was some positive about that. But there's a lot of religions of all kinds that tend to be steer away from, I think, the real intended good. So I just have to keep it as personal as I can, and again, just try to be a better version of myself.
Amazing. I'd like to make this conversation a little more interesting.
Okay.
I would like to bring in a very special guest.
Oh yeah.
He goes by the name Vikram Vivekanand, who's a phenomenal guitarist and composer. He
All right.
plays for multiple projects. His main outfit being Grey Shack, which is a band from Chennai in India.
Okay.
And he plays for another folk band, Indian folk and Carnatic music called Indo Soul.
Cool.
And he also plays for the movies with another movie composer called
Nice.
Sean Roldan.
All right.
So
This guy sounds
before I
good.
bring him in, I'd
Yeah.
like to play a little bit of his music
Oh,
and
please.
would love to hear what you have to say about it.
Absolutely. Check it out.
It's worth, I hope you had a good time.
Nice. Very cool,
What do you
man. Good
think,
playing.
Andy?
Really, really nice. I was appreciating some of the voice leading going on there. Dug it. Nice energy at the end. It was good.
Well,
You
I
told a
think
story, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's time to bring him in.
Absolutely.
All right.
Hey, hi.
How
How's
you
it
doing,
going?
Vikram?
I'm doing
Man,
great, Andy. It's so good to see you.
nice to see you. We were just checking out your video, man. You sound great.
Oh man, thank you so much. It means a lot
Yes.
coming from you.
Some really nice melody going on there. Some good energy. I liked it a lot, man.
Thank you. Thank you. That
Nicely
was my
done.
own that was my own band. So that's a song that we wrote together. So it's an original.
Sounds very cool, man. Sounds like you're very big. He was telling me, he sounds like you got a lot of projects going on with film
Uh
stuff, some
yeah,
folk stuff. Yeah.
I do a bunch of things actually. So the film stuff I haven't done for a few weeks now.
Yeah.
But I've been touring with a whole bunch of different bands. Like one day I'm doing a tribute gig, and another day I'm doing
Yeah.
original alternative rock with another band, and then another day
Sure.
I'm doing fusion, Indian music
That's the way
fusion.
to do it. That sounds like my career. It's like what as long as I had a guitar in my hands, I didn't, yeah, I said yes to everything for many, many, many years. Just keeping
Yeah,
busy.
the
That's the
point is to
thing.
play more guitar, right?
The point is to play more guitar. What can I do to keep the lights on somehow? But yeah, play more guitar.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great, man. Congratulations. I'm very happy for you to have that career going, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's not for everybody, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't
It
dream of
isn't.
doing anything else.
That's a good thing to point out. It's a lot of hard work. It's not always glamorous, is it? It takes a lot to do
It's
what we
not.
do, but good for you, man. That's the thing. If you love it enough, it's kind of like we don't have a choice. It's like
Yeah, and you keep
what?
constantly you keep getting reminded that you need to take care of your health as well. So that's a
Well,
big deal.
amen to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Get
Yeah.
enough sleep. Don't eat too much junk food. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. My weight goes up and down a little bit, but I'm on a good path. I walk 4 miles every day now, which is
Nice. Okay.
which gets a little tough in Texas because it's pretty hot. But no, it's if I practice first thing of the day, go for a long walk, then the rest of the day is good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally like sets you up for the whole day, right? Once you get that.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
difficult, like you say, when you're out touring. That's when it gets challenging because it's easy to make bad decisions out of, there's not a lot of options sometimes. So,
Yeah.
or there's always for us, they're always ordering pizza and junk food. It's like, no, that's gonna make me feel horrible. It'll
Yeah.
taste
Yeah.
great right now, but I'll feel like crap later.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Anyway,
when we go to our hotels, when we go and when we're touring, sometimes you
yeah,
just want like simple home food, right?
yeah,
So
exactly
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah.
So I had a couple of interesting questions for the two of you. Since
sure.
both of you are session artists,
Yeah.
you spoke about touring.
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand from each of you as to your process of putting material together for these sessions. How different is it?
Well, for me personally, it can be so drastically different. I still do some radio, TV jingle stuff occasionally, and there's no prep for that. Usually they'll just provide me a basic chord chart, and then they're relying on my experience and knowledge of music to play what's going to make the track. The producers that hire you they start to rely on you for that, and that's great. Now, sessions like the Red Coach record, that's a whole different ball game because Matt will write these really difficult lines to play, send me the music, and then I read well enough to learn something, but I couldn't sit there and sight read that. It takes me, sometimes days to really work on it to get it together. So it can go from that different, of a range. Now, if it's doing shows and concerts, the main thing for me is if it's not my own songs, I need to listen a lot to the music. I don't want to have to rely on everybody's got iPads and whatnot, or I want to have it memorized because I don't want to have my face in a page. Sometimes it's necessary if there's not enough time, but I'd really rather be in the middle of the music and do that work ahead of time. Any gig that I do, I will be as prepared as humanly possible. But and then just do the best you can, right? Vikram, what about you? What's your process?
Similar process. I don't like taking sheets on stage if I can help it.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it's a studio date, I think that the skill set's a little different. You kind of need to know how to read the room,
Sure.
especially if it's someone you haven't worked with before.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing to take some time to kind of understand where they're coming from as a person, before you even start playing any music. And
That's a really
because
great point. That's a great
yeah,
point.
there was this one session I had when I had to go and play sort of like a heavy rock kind of track. Um, but up until then, I was used to people telling me exactly what they wanted me to play, and that's a good thing in its own way because it takes a lot of the guesswork out. But sometimes you need to go in and do your thing, and that's exactly like what you said. People are hiring you for what you can bring to the table. So you need to
You
read
brought
the
up a
room.
well, that's a becomes a huge talent by doing exactly that. And that's another thing that you said, we're getting to know the artist. And you know a lot of what people, the reason people want to work with us has some to do with our musical abilities, but it also has to do with who we are as a person. And if you're easy with communication, if you take direction, if you can insert direction when you need to be driving that, but just being somebody that's cool to hang out with, and not being egotistical or arrogant or whatever the thing you can say. It's just important to be able to get along, especially with touring. As you know, it's like 90 minutes or 2 hours on stage. That's one thing. It's the other 22 hours of the day. If you got somebody that isn't considered in any possible way, it's gonna wear pretty quickly, right? So
Yeah, when I
people
was
see.
on tour, I did a 40-day tour once in 2016,
Yeah.
and I made every effort to stay away from the rest of the band because I
It's
see them every day.
it's tough sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially if there's any rub with personality, it can make it troublesome. So I've been really blessed with the majority of my, at least later in life, bands has been with people that I really love to be with. I've turned down some tours that I didn't think that would be the case. You know what I mean? If like you knew enough about the artist or whatever, like I don't think that's going to be any fun. I'm not going to do that. When you're younger, you tend to say yes to a lot more, because out of necessity, and you're forging your reputation, you're forging your voice. But then hopefully over time, you can start to be a little bit more selective about what you're uh, able and willing to do.
yeah, it's getting there. I think it's definitely
Good.
getting there for me. Yeah,
Yeah, good for
yeah.
you, man.
Managed if the ability to say no is a wonderful skill to have.
Well, that's the thing. I still have a hard time with that. My nature is to want to please, so I'll sometimes take on something like, oh man, why did I say yes to that? So, but I'm learning. That's a work in progress.
Yeah, Yeah.
I think Vikram had a question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, Aditya was telling me about not about being very careful about not asking you stuff that people have already asked you before, right? Especially with the YouTube interviews, and I've seen a lot of your videos, especially the stuff where you made Dan cry on on that pedal show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
uh,
But you
yeah.
know what? That particular video, that piece you played, and and that piece is something that you probably just came up with on the spot, right?
Oh
I
no, no, no,
presume.
no, no.
Or
Not at
you wrote it.
all.
Or you wrote it.
That,
Okay.
that's a that's a song that I wrote. It's called "Here Lies the Heart." The the
Uh,
the playing of it was spontaneous. We were just talking about whatever, and I decided in the moment to play that the first part of it. And if
mhm.
you notice, I play what is essentially the first half, and I was going to stop because I didn't want to take up too much time with the music. And as I'm about to stop playing, I look over and I see Dan and Mick just looking at me. I said, I better keep playing. So luckily it's a pretty good version of the piece. And of course it had the effect on Dan. And we literally had to stop filming for a minute. But
Yeah.
I've written quite a few pieces in that voice, in that nature. One of which I just released. We were talking earlier. I did a couple of singles at Abbey Road in London last month.
I watched
And
that
so,
video. I watched
yeah,
that.
they're
Yeah.
all part of a collection of songs that will eventually be released together called the Outlier Nocturnes, the Bittersweets. So they're all kind of Chopin esque, Chopin's, ballady kind of writing. Just on
Mhm.
the, guitar. I like that particular sound, a slightly broken up neck pickup with my Halo dual echo on there, and it's a beautiful sound to play in, and it becomes easy for me to find melodies in there. So
Which actually leads me to the actual question I wanted to ask you was,
okay.
it's like a lot of your pieces. I've been hearing your records ever since Year Ecstasy and Resolution. I've been listening to you
And
since then.
wow, thank
And
you.
and of course I had to go back and listen to what you did with Danger Danger, and I haven't had a chance to listen to anything that you did with Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah,
Um,
just some
but
live stuff. There's not much studio stuff, but a lot of live gigs. Yeah, but that's me, doing what's right for that band.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I noticed that all your songs are like little stories.
Ah,
Yeah,
well, thank you.
because
Yeah,
and I want to know, and I'd like to pick your brain. I know it's a bit of an abstract question, but
sure.
uh, where do those stories come from, and how do you go about writing those stories?
Well, the stories just come from, emotion. It comes from, some of the music is very directly influenced by events. Could be in my life, somebody near to me's life, or world events. There's an endless source of things that make you feel a certain way. And so over time, I, have started to recognize that if I'm in a particular mood or feeling a certain thing, music will kind of come to me without me trying, at least a nugget of an idea. And a lot of times it's first thing in the morning before my brain kicks on too much and something starts to happen. Um, and then it's just kind of fleshing it out to where, it really says what you're trying to communicate. We'd have to talk about, specific piece to specific piece. 'Cause sometimes it's just a piece of music. And sometimes it's, that with my oral act, what I call my ears, um, instincts, where, very much so, what if I'm improvising or if I'm composing, it's really the same thing. Because if I play a certain note or two notes or three notes, I kind of quickly know what I want to hear next, however that happens. We were talking earlier about all our influences and how we develop our own musical, you know, style on a guitar or whatever your instrument is. It's the same thing for melodic instinct, where that's why the Beatles were such great songwriters, because they learned a bunch of songs. So when it came time for them to write their own music, they had kind of an instinct that they didn't even know they were developing, but that's exactly how they got that. They weren't studied musicians. They could just hear it. They felt it and they heard it and they were able to put that together. So that's what's going on with my compositions. It's just I'm trying to really tell that story of that emotion, whatever it might be, you know. But as I mentioned earlier, because it's not confined to the written or spoken language, I think that it'll mean something very specific to me, but it might come across and be interpreted by the listener kind of to whatever they need it to be for them. You know, and I've had people tell me that they could sometimes will get emotional with certain songs of mine, and I'm honored by that because there's been a lot of music in my life. Chopin has done it to me. Brian Wilson, some of his melodic, you know, ballady material can strike you so deeply that it really makes you feel something profound. So that's, you know, as I spoke earlier about, you know, I think there's so much potential to really reach those kinds of things, not only in just the composition, but also the sound and the technique that's happening to produce those sounds that will help, you know, make Dan cry, basically. You know, so that to speak to that, there was the guitar was recorded well that day, but the sound that was happening in that room, I can't begin to tell you, was one of the greatest guitar tones I'd ever had the blessing of playing. And it was very much to do with, it was my normal Lone Star rig, but Mick had this wonderful 212 vertical Mesa Boogie cabinet with two Electro Voice speakers in it, which I hadn't played through, but are very high watt and really clean. And so it took that sound very well, and it was overwhelming in the room. So it was not just the composition, it was the sound in that room that made that feeling happen for all of us, you know.
Interesting, Andy. You mentioned about the whole aspect of tonality. I was reading this very article which mentioned about people associating certain ideas with certain sounds, right? And the two of you being instrumentalists and putting out a lot of instrumental music, how do you go about associating tones with these songs that you're trying to put out? Like, how do you pick the right timbre or the palette for a particular track, for instance?
Yeah,
How do you do
Vikram,
that?
Vikram, you go.
Well, it would depend on the gig first of all.
Yep.
And well, it does help to have a guitar that would kind of like do a lot.
Yes.
Because I don't like changing my guitars too often in the set unless I had to change for a different tuning or
Yeah.
something specific like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like tone wise, like I tend to not use too much gain because that you'll never get heard if you use too much gain. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, and you play for the song. You just play. You just. I mean, your tone choices are not primary focus really. It's what the song requires really. So it's really driven by what the song really needs. It's what it's asking for, and how you will play with the rest of the band as well. You don't want to be having a lot of low end in your guitar because that will beat
Yeah.
up with the bass guitar. And it all just comes down to you not being heard. So you find your space, you find your spot, and you stick with it. And then you can choose your guitars actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way of thinking of it. So I'll take a little different. I mean, I totally agree in that context as you're the session or band member. But you know, for my own compositions, there's a lot of the tones that end up being the sound of the song. Usually it starts there. I might have a sound and I'll like, of course, the solo pieces, I've got that tone and I start playing and the song happens in that way. But but it's the same instincts that we have with the songwriting and the soloing. You know, I think there's an idea for me specifically. There's an idea in my head of what I think a great sound is. If I'm imagining what I'm going to play like in this particular song, I might have, you know, Eric Johnson's clean tone or Stevie Ray's neck pickup bluesy tone or whatever, you know, Jeff Beck's sound. You know, there's these kind of things that have set benchmarks for us. And then with our fingers and our gear that we have available to us, we will do the best we can to find that But that's why when people are saying that, they want to work on their tone, I always say it just starts with the ear. It starts with what you want to hear. What are you trying to accomplish? And then, that's what they will say that, really great players will kind of sound like themselves through any rig because they're trying to get the same sound but they've learned how to do it with their hands as much as the gear. There's a lot of it emanating from the pick and the attack and the finger and the sound of the fingers on the strings, but then they know how to manipulate the electronics to a certain degree to get closer there. But it's all that combined experience and effort that gets you to the next level of something that's hopefully pleasant for everybody to hear.
There's a sound in your head that you kind of hear in your mind's ear as such, and you do whatever you can to get it out there, no matter what guitar you're using, what amp you're using. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I'm like that too. I've got this old, it's my Ibanez. It's the AT100, but it's, humbucker in the neck, but it's single coil sounding. I've got the coil tap on the humbucker, and I could do any gig with this guitar. It's nice to have something like Vikram was saying, that you don't have to change too much and that you can really get a variety of things out of, Yeah.
So in the interest of time, I'd like to come to the last part of our agenda,
Sure.
which is a very quick rapid fire between the two of you.
Great.
Let's see who does better.
Yeah.
You
All
can't take too long to answer these questions.
Okay,
right?
great. It's gonna be quick.
Yeah. So first question for you. What's that one song that always makes you cry?
Comfortably Numb
Wow, that's a nice one.
from Pulse. Yeah.
Good Lord, this is tough. It used to be She's Leaving Home by the Beatles, Surf's Up can do it. Brian Wilson's demo of Surf's Up is pretty amazing.
Amazing. On the contrary, what's your favorite guilty pleasure song?
That's easy. I get crap for this, but Mandy by Barry Manilow.
Oh, amazing.
Go ahead, Vikram.
Mine is Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys.
All right. Way to
It's a
go.
good song. It's a good
Oh,
song.
hey, a good song is a good song.
Good song.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's all I need. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, what are the top 3 qualities of a guitar critique?
I'll do it quickly. So time, feel, tone, and vibrato.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of
it's
like
pretty universal. Yeah.
It's pretty universal. If you hear the tone that's not happening, it's going to be tough. If the time's not happening, it's going to be tough. If the vibrato's not happening, yeah, that's tough.
If the two of you had an opportunity to put together an all-star blues rock band, you can pick artists from any era at any point in time.
How many instruments? What's the instrumentation that we have to limit?
It's I don't know, maybe you can have a wind section, you can have strings, and you can have the foundation in place.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'll go first just out of interest of time. So I'm going to pick Chris Layton. I just think he's a great drummer.
Okay.
He's got enough Mitch Mitchell in him, and he plays a great shuffle. Anybody that can play a great shuffle, if I'm playing blues rock, the shuffle's not happening, we're not going to get anywhere. On bass, I'm gonna back this up. I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna say Lamar Carter on drums and Travis Carlton on bass, because that's who's been on my last 2 records. And I'm so thrilled with the way these guys sound. They kind of come from a bluesy rock R&B thing, but they played on my Electric Truth record, and they're on my next solo release that Josh Smith is co-producing. So I'll put Josh in there too, because he's my brother. So the 4 of us with Darren Johnson on keyboards, I'm a happy guy.
Okay, my pick.
Yeah.
I'd go with Jeff Beck on guitar.
I didn't know we could pick another. Oh,
He said any.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would be the bass player then if he's in my band. I'm not touching a guitar.
Okay, then Andy Timmons on bass.
I'll do it. If Jeff Beck's in the band, thank you for putting me in the band with Jeff Beck. I appreciate that.
I'll have Bernard Purdy on drums.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
Billy Preston on keyboards.
Oh, love Billy Preston. I love you for saying that. That's freaking awesome.
And just because he's a really good singer as well, Stevie Ray Vaughan on guitar and vocals.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
That Stevie, he's got potential. No, that's a good band.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
band
I got all selfish
sounds
and
rad
selfish.
for sure.
But you went deep, man. I like it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
What's your favorite cuisine?
Oh man, that's got to be Thai food because that's where I'm headed in about 2 minutes when we get off the phone here. I've got an amazing Thai restaurant here called Thai Noodle Wave in McKinney, Texas, and it's the best. As good as being in Thailand. It's just that good.
I like Asian food as well. Most of it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
being in Texas, Tex-Mex is a big thing. So between that and Thai, every day, I'm no problem. I
What
eat,
are
I eat,
the
I
yeah.
eat much healthier when I go to the Thai place though, because I get a nice salad and today they have a different soup every day. Today's it's a wonderful peanut soup. So
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
I'm not hungry.
We can see that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are the top three qualities of a musician that you personally embody?
That we personally embody.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting because I keep coming back to just the nature of the person, and it's not to be self-aggrandizing, but I have skills with just being able to get along with people, but then also fitting in musically, like Vikram was saying, where you know I know how to fit into the situation.
Yeah.
So it's those, and again, it's by just being a decent person, that takes care of a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Just having the awareness of the ripple effect, what you're putting out will cause. So that just the conscientiousness, the flexibility, and then just really being willing to do the work to be the best I can.
Yeah. For me, it's being on time,
Yeah. Yes.
landing up a rehearsal prepared,
Yep.
and like you said, like be easygoing, don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah. Man, the
Just love to
punctuality
have
thing
fun
is,
because
yeah, the punctuality thing for me is one of the most important things. But I expect from everybody else. Because if somebody's
yeah,
perpetually late, it's so disrespectful. It's
Yeah.
like, because what they're saying is, my time is more important than yours. It's like we all agreed to do this. Let's respect each other, respect the music, like you say, being prepared. Do the work, respect for everybody involved is so important. Sorry to step on your answer there, but I'm chiming in because it's so on point and so important. Yeah.
One
and
last question.
that's how you survive in the industry anyway.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, if people
Yeah,
can't depend on you, you're not going to get the call. If you're
yeah.
going to be late, it's just the way it is. So,
Yeah. So last question for today. Down in the distant horizon, what would you like to be remembered as?
let's see. Somebody that loves Thai food. Um, I know. I mean, just, somebody that played well and wrote songs well and treated people with love and respect.
Yeah, I mean, if you could leave if you leave behind a legacy like that, that's more than anyone can ask for.
I
Yeah,
mean, exactly that. Just
yeah,
that, if you had any positive impact, that's phenomenal. And just, I think we already have, for each of us, the fact that we're doing what we love to do. Somehow through that, we're helping people and either helping educate them, giving them something positive in their life musically, with information and helping spread information about these things that we love. That we're already successful. So then it's up to everybody else how we're remembered. But if we just honor these things that we're talking about, and that's all we can do.
and sometimes all you need to do is just distract someone from someone who's having a really hard day. Just distract them for a few
Oh,
hours.
and
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about. Just how easy it is. As I was raising my son, and we'd be in public, and he'd see me say hello or say hi to somebody and have a brief exchange. And he'd go, "Dad, did you know that person?" I said, "No, but I'm going to make an effort just to, if I'll make eye contact with somebody, if they look like they need a smile, I'll be happy to give that to them." And it's so easy to give somebody that distraction or to do something nice for somebody. You don't know what's going on in their life. And that can maybe have a very positive effect on their day. So why not? That's really the best thing we could be doing out there, especially today with such division and strife in the world, man. Just be good to each other and to everybody and yourself, you know.
That's a great answer for a closure. This interview will be additionally aired on Big FM Shillong and Aizawl, two incredible
Nice.
radio stations in the northeastern part of India.
Nice.
And it'll
Thank
be
you.
out on my YouTube channel, Aditya Veera 1994. And it'll also
Awesome.
be streaming on all audio platforms at a much later point. Thank you so
Cool.
much, gentlemen. It's been such an incredible blessing, honor, and a
Yeah.
privilege. Thank you so much for
Likewise.
tuning in and taking time out.